Hello everyone, welcome to the Monsoon 2022 Sea Conversations titled Drawing Out Natures. I'm Rohit Mazumdar. I teach at the School of Environment and Architecture. Drawing out nature foregrounds the role of imaginations in inventing worlds and also how we come to understand them by constructing realities based on specific ways of seeing, listening, and sensing. It is an engagement towards making visible the invisible relations between natures and natures of human and modern human agency. We delve into the drawing out of natures to advance imaginaries of engagement with contemporary ecological crisis and climate emergencies, and the contests that come to erode and expand socio-spatial claims in the shared ecologies of our world. I extend a warm welcome to each one of you to join in the third conversation of this series, Afforesting Water, Urban Landscape, Miyawaki Forest with K. Sakthivel and Vibhavari Saranga. This online lecture series has been co-curated and supported by the Shared Ecologies program of the Shama Foundation, along with the ongoing support of Urban Center Mumbai. Welcome Sakthivel and Vibhavari. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you, Vibhavari.
No, I said hi. Thanks.
Right. K. Sakthivel is a Madurai-based environmentalist. He has founded and manages RainMan Enviro Solutions, Madurai. He is renowned for creating Madurai's first Miyawaki forest and has gone on to cultivate and care for many such large-scale Miyawaki forests in Tamil Nadu. Through this organization, since 2012, Sakthivel has been conducting tree plantation drives, environment awareness campaigns, water management programs, survey of ground and rainwater data, and has also offered rainwater harvesting consulting to the citizens of Madurai city. By collaborating with the School of Environment and Architecture's Green Lab, he aims to create such microforests across Maharashtra. It is also my pleasure to have Vibhavari Saranga in this conversation. Vibhavari graduated from the School of Environment and Architecture in 2020. Along with her engagements with various practices over the last 2 years, her search focuses on extending her undergraduate thesis, Relinking Padmanagar, which is based on rejuvenating existing social networks in a low-income neighborhood through a series of social and environmental interjections to afforest dense urban areas that would create environmentally active social nodes in such settlements. Sakthivel's and Vibhavari's presentation discusses a collaborative experiment between them, architects and cultivators and researchers, that aims at infusing the urban fabric with indigenous and fast-growing forests. These environmental nodes or zones, they hope, shall act as resilient corridors, alleviating the effects of climate change. So welcome. Really a pleasure to have both of you here. I'll let you take over from here and start your presentation. I will switch off my screen and then come back once your presentation is done. But you all can keep your cameras on. Okay?
Okay. I'd just like to share my screen. Just a minute, sorry. Just put my phone on silent. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, Vibhavari.
Okay. I'll just switch off my camera. I'm keeping the screen on, my PPT on. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Vibha, and today, on behalf of C and Shaktivel and myself, I'd like to present our collaborative greening project, Afforesting Urban Landscape. This is an experiment in greening Padmanagar. This is the boundary of Mumbai city. And the portion marked in red is the Devna dump yard. The Devna dump yard forms the northeastern edge of Mumbai. It's Asia's oldest and largest dump yard, which was started over a century ago by the British. Today, it's a 120-acre, 32-meter tall toxic mountain. In the year 2016, continuous dumpster fires brought the entire Mumbai city to a grinding halt. And it was then that NASA released images of this thick smoke being spat out by the dump. And only then, when far-flung suburbs like Andheri started to choke up, did intense debates start about shutting this dump down. And while the entire focus was on air pollution and closing the dump yard, and all for the benefit of the citizens of Mumbai, no efforts were really made for those who live and work right next to it. Ironically, over 50 years ago, at the foothills of this same toxic mountain, a series of resettlement housing schemes were planned and implemented by the government itself. It was then seen as one of Mumbai's largest, most dense, and most ambitious resettlement projects. In a bid to clean up the city's housing problem, large populations were made to move here en masse from various corners of Mumbai into these colonies. So I marked the colonies here. Shivaji Nagar, a settlement that spreads along the edge of the dump yard, was first inhabited in the 1970s, where people moved into plots of land allocated to them by the state, resulting in an informal settlement that continues to grow to this day. The portion that I marked in red is Padmanagar. It's one such resettlement hub, an ever-growing basti. It's an informal housing. It's considered a slum today, which chokes up due to dump fires every winter. It's also home to most of Mumbai's lung disease patients. And here, the average lifespan of citizens is just 39 years. And this toxic edge of Mumbai desperately needs an environmental shield. I recently graduated from C and had studied this settlement, Padmanagar, for my thesis. While engaging with the local residents here through an intensive study of their lives and the societal environmental conditions on site, I got the opportunity to deeply investigate the issues they face daily. By documenting their daily life through interviews and walkthroughs, I was able to map a series of negotiations made by people that created the architectural experience here. So by walking through with the residents of the settlement, I could identify their social nodes, where they even used the flattened portions of the dump yard as a playground, where, like, as you can see, the dump yard is being used as a playground in the evenings, where there is a freedom to expand because this was a resettlement, plotted resettlement hub. People had the freedom to expand, create balconies, start growing small trees. There are occupations here that are dependent on the workings of the dump yard. Little kids learn about local infrastructure because they themselves have to auto construct. But also there's a sense of surveillance and safety because the dump yard on the right hand side that's marked in black, that's constantly surveilled by the authorities. But also there's a sense of celebration here because it's such a dense settlement. Every festival, every small family's celebration becomes a festival here. So there's a deep, rich sense of social network here. Like I said, from the dump as a playground to new extended balconies and evening gossip addas and even prayer meetings, I was able to learn about the habitation here from the locals. I soon realized that so far, the government has only managed to house and rehouse people through waves and waves of resettlement, and that too all along the edges of this dump. There are different NGOs that currently operate across social sectors here for health, education, social development, but no steps have been taken to shut the dump and sort out the ecological mess created here. Due to the continuous use and expansion of the dump, and also the increase in climate change disasters, the health issues here, the security, the livability, general habitation in such settlements are very dangerous. And unless we join hands with the residents here, the future of this edge of Mumbai and also the rest of Mumbai looks as bleak as predicted in the 2050 IPCC report. Based on this very bleak and depressing context, I identified a series of nodes that are active here, social nodes that are already used by the residents. I marked them out in red in the first diagram. I then started marking out the existing social problems here. Where do they face intense darkness? Where do they face disturbances? And then I sort of married these two diagrams to create a new layer of nodes. So in the final diagram, you can see that as a simple solution to engage with and improve the habitation here, a series of new environmentally active spaces were introduced, both by rethinking the existing nodes, but also by adding new environmental commons. As an integral part of this new layer, the intent was to introduce groves, intense greenery in the form of indigenous, fast-growing Miyawaki forest hubs, which will improve the air, soil, and groundwater quality and become an environmental shield for the people of this edge of the city. These new injected green nodes would not only act as rejuvenated commons, but also help generate a new economy for the local women, while the biggest beneficiaries will be the children here due to the knowledge gained through this experience. After a year after my thesis, I decided to try and execute this idea on site. And it was while researching on how to create these nodes on such a toxic ground that I came across the ambitious and impactful greening projects of Sakthivel and his team. Since 2012, his team at RainMan Enviro Solutions Madurai have been running water management and tree plantation schemes in Tamil Nadu. After successfully surveying the groundwater data in Madurai in 2015 and 2017, Shakti also founded South Tamil Nadu's first rain center, providing consultancy to people about rainwater harvesting schemes. And in 2018, his team added another feather in their cap by creating Madurai's first Miyawaki forest, and then went on to create many such urban forests, including a vast 51,000 tree forest at the Sitco at Kappalur outside Madurai. When I reached out to him, Sakthivel said that he was very eager to expand his work to Mumbai and was excited to work on a soil that's chemically very different from his usual urban greening projects. His wealth of knowledge in community engagement, his unique ideas to improve the water table, especially in a state like Tamil Nadu, and his generosity to share his learnings through his social media platforms make him an ideal mentor for the greening exercise envisioned at Padmanagar. At SEA, we believe in the relevance of climate, context, culture, but most importantly, the community in shaping the architecture of a place. While the field of architecture formally focuses only on spaces, that too formal spaces, where even the informal spaces get redeveloped into deeply regulated formal spaces, there's very little effort taken in improving the lives of those inhabiting these highly vulnerable, dense, and also neglected spaces. Therefore, after a series of discussions with Sakthivel and a basic project map with an idea to collaborate, I presented this project idea to SEA, a basic greening experiment of forestry in dense informal settlements, in possibly highly toxic soil, but also by engaging with and employing locals. SEA saw in it the simplicity to also be replicated as a module, an ambitious and contextual idea which can be replicated all over the designated open spaces as marked in the 2034 DP Development Plan of Mumbai. This was an opportunity for all of us, quite literally, to get into the field of greening. Thus, a collaborative idea took form where we at SEA would collaborate with practitioners like Sakthivel, ideate with local institutions, and harness the skills and care of locals. And so multiple layered collaborations, we aim to again literally plant our research onto real sites and bring about an environmental shift straight from the most vulnerable pockets of Mumbai. For this, we studied Shakti's experiments with forestry. And what we'd like to ask Shakti is what is his idea on expanding his existing practice from Tamil Nadu to Mumbai? And what is his vision of this collaboration given the unique site conditions? But I'd also like to ask him what made Shakti, an engineer, choose forestry as his way of giving back to the environment? And what are the changes he's witnessed that inspire him to continue, especially here? Over to you, Shakti.
Okay. Thank School of Environmental Architecture for this wonderful opportunity to me. Actually, environmental is a universal problem, so there is no border. So I am happy to work with Viva for Mumbai or any places. Because Viva's question, what made to choose this field? Actually, basically I'm an electronics engineer, electronics and communication engineer. During my college period, we are regenerating lakes and water bodies. So after my graduate, I got some placements, but I thought I want to create a startup in environmental sector, especially in water sector. In 2013-14, there is less number of water experts because the day there is not much very less opportunities and very less networking in that time, because as a fresh graduate I passed out in a rural area engineering college, so I don't have any connectivity. So I went to lot of places, like I came to Mumbai also, Bellary, Gundukal, Raipur. So I met I had a mentor. I have a mentor in Mumbai only. So I went to a lot of places and I learned practically, because I'm not a qualification wise I'm not an environmental engineer, but I am a practical environmental engineer. So I went to a lot of places. I take a lot of handmade training sessions, even JSW Bellary. So I went there. So I do a lot of practices in rainwater harvesting. So I'm doing rainwater harvesting, residential, agriculture, whatever. In that time, the people ask me, there is no rain. Why I do rainwater harvesting? So I do some brainstorming. So I want to do for already in meantime we are plantation. We are doing a lot of tree plantation from 2012 to till now. But after 2014, 15, 16, so I heard about Miyawaki forest. So I asked some sponsors like Rotary Club. They are I explained because there is no testimonial or like any practical example for Miyawaki in surrounding area. So they believe, because I did lot of rainwater harvesting for community projects for them. So they accepted for Miyawaki. We are trying. In early time, we spent lot of amount, because I blindly follow all instructions from Akira Miyawaki, the founder of the Japanese concept. So later only by practice we do some cars, we do some alternate. So we choose our indigenous plant. Very particularly we do indigenous plant. So we are creating after COVID 2019-20. So till now after COVID we did more than 70 to 80,000 trees, and particularly we are regularly maintaining. Because today also I sent a labor to pruning for the Miyawaki forest. Yeah, because Miyawaki forest needs some periodical maintenance for a couple of years. So we are currently maintaining all Miyawaki forest also. Why I choose this? Because a lot of people ask rainwater harvesting is a civil engineers domain. plantation and plantation. We are also doing wastewater recycling is plants only, natural reed system, constructed wetland. So it's a chemical engineer, botanical engineers, sorry, botanical persons domain. Tree plantation is the agriculture person domain. Why you are choosing this? I say electronics engineer. So I said I don't blame any of them, but mostly civil engineers went to construction, building construction, and they're going to real estate. Agriculture people going to seed company, pesticides company. So no one focus the environmental sector side. Environmental engineer also going to the because sewage treatment plant and ETP plant job. So especially in South Tamil Nadu, there is no opportunity for social entrepreneur, environmental. Only you can survive as a activist, but you can't survive as a entrepreneur. So I am trying my level best. So I am interested in environmental sector. So I went to a lot of places. I learned something. So I am doing something for Mother Nature.
And when you get into a project, especially like you said correctly, it's a Japanese technique, a Miyawaki technique of native plants, but fast growing and spaced in a particular way. So you have levels of trees. So when you chose this and when you started with your first project, what were your expectations then? Because like it's shown on the screen, you started off like within a year, you see dense growth. When you first started, how was your experience versus now when you're used to, when you know the process? So what were your expectations then when you got into a new sector like this? Because it's so unexplored even now.
Yeah, actually, there is no 30 years old Miyawaki project.
Miyawaki
So,
forest, yeah.
using only YouTube, social media, and other articles, only we can learn. Um, actually, my first Miyawaki project is the failure project. I'm not doing in Madurai. It's nearby Virudhunagar district. So I made that person is a very great person. We have a lot of industries, but they are the sibling brothers company. So a lot of siblings there. So I told the he accepting new ideas in environmental sector. He do rainwater harvesting for all industries, but his brothers are scolding. Why are you spending money for this rainwater harvesting? So hey, it's for only future investment. So he said. So I introduced Miyawaki about. He also read about lot of articles. Okay, he gave whatever I want.
So it was an experiment
Yeah,
basically initially.
no. I just create actually filling the lands only. I prepared the land. I
Okay.
bought a trees, but unfortunately the local politics, brothers politics, so the work was stopped. So
Oh,
then
okay.
only stopped. Till now the land is only barren.
Right, okay.
So
So it was
after that,
conflict that stopped it. It wasn't exactly
yeah.
nature or lack of
Yeah,
care.
yeah. In a partner, in a family partner, one person gave all things, but finally I bought 200 trees saplings. I almost actually 200 saplings. I think 40 to 50 varieties I bought. So 30 I bought, but finally they plant in another places. So I came to Madurai. I told to I already did a school, government school. I did rainwater harvesting for Rotary people. So I said, Rotary people, sir, I do this. Eh, we will support the. You can do. They said. So they spent more than a lakh for that project. Finally, uh, actually, I choose the very clay soil. I think the 6 year old normal plantation. The 6 year old trees are only about 10 feet height only, 3 meters height only they grow. It's a very unfertile soil. It's like a calcium. I think calcium oriented soil.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's a very hard project. Because we need a lot of wood waste. In the middle of the town, we need a filling actually. We need a filling.
So in
lot of
that
filling for
project, you
Miyawaki.
learned what are the layers that go
Yeah.
into making the soil
After
and
that,
the ground.
yeah, it's very 3,000 square feet, 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. After that, I do a 4 acre. So in that time, so it's very hard
because
to.
We know
Yeah,
when
I'm
we're
very hard to.
talking
I'm
about
very hard to convincing other people. Why are you planting like very nearly? Very close to close? Why are you planting? So
correct.
educating people and how to convincing them is a very tough challenge. Otherwise, now blindly they okay. I think our lot of government also doing the same.
There are many government
only,
schemes.
yeah, they planted 1,000 saplings, but they plant only 3 varieties saplings only.
Correct.
They are blindly they are becoming the concept of close very nearby plantation, but they forgot about the land preparation, the plant choosing varieties, so forgot it. So it's very challenging before, I think, 5 years ago.
So because when we discussed this with C, I remember that we described this as a module where we create these small micro jungles as the lowest hanging fruit, like the simplest method to ensure a positive climatic change. And also by targeting the most vulnerable and toxic sites in Mumbai. So we can draw from your experiences as to your first project, as to why it didn't work versus now when your projects are working and thriving, they're doing really well. So taking from that, we can launch our project in Bombay in a site that normally cuts short the lifespan of whatever plants grow there because of the toxic environment. But we can achieve the following goals, learning from your experiments. We can learn that, by using the historical methods and existing knowledge, like you said, whatever we already know, and by using the various government schemes that you spoke of, because now everybody is getting into combating climate change using Miyawaki techniques, but it turns out to be 3 indigenous species in like closed settings. But if we make that right, but also initiating this people's movement, because otherwise there's a challenge of people not agreeing to this because it's a new name, it's a Japanese name, they won't agree. But how do you endorse it to people using their own knowledge? So we can improve the lives of local residents, especially here, health and well-being. We can generate new job opportunities, especially for the women, and we can improve social harmony and cooperation. It's a must, especially here in M East Ward, where we have this problem of toxic smoke. We have all these, right here in M East Ward, we have all these large corporations like BRC, RCF, BPCL, HPCL. They'll give us land. Even if it's not just the toxic settlement, we can try creating forests in these regulated government lands, which can sort of generate funds for us to experiment in sites like Padmanagar. And also along existing green lungs, like, existing school grounds, existing cemeteries, existing spiritual nodes, where we can create. So in spiritual nodes and government nodes, when we create, generate some sort of interest and profit, and then use that to experiment here. And then we can create a new ecosystem by harnessing the knowledge that we get from here and the care of the younger generation. But I wanted to know from you that when we try these experiments here, whether it's an existing old forest that we try to expand and care for, or whether it's a new Miyawaki scheme that we're trying with help from the government, or whether it's like a cooperative movement that we sort of envision, and then by tying up with these various organizations, what are your goals, like when you get into a project like this, and it's a vast subject like forestry, does it come under the narrow idea of goals? Can you ever quantify it? Because a forest is so vast, and with time it becomes more and more dense. So how do you merge the idea of an old big forest with a new urban forest, where we, join hands with various organizations to create this forest? And also, will this method, Miyawaki, this quick method of native forests, will they be the same over time as an old forest, or will they be different? I'd like to know that from you.
Okay. Actually, why we are choosing Miyawaki is for a single reason. Because we already discussed about it. It's a Japanese technology. In Japan, they have very less space because they have volcanoes. They have less space. So they created for a Miyawaki forest method in a minimum place and maximum green cover. So why we choose this method? Because India is a very bigger landscape in the world. But the reason for this now the entire city is a concrete jungle, become a concrete jungle. So there is no space for green cover. This only for this reason we are choosing Miyawaki forest because there is no option. There is not there is the probability there is nothing better. Sorry, something
This
better
is an
for
urban
nothing. I think.
solution. Like for an old idea, it's like an urban equivalent.
Yeah. For example, normal plantation. For example, the minimum 15 feet distance, you can plant minimum 400 trees per acre. Minimum 200 to 400 trees only per acre. Per acre, actually 43,000 square feet. But in that Miyawaki forest, you can plant in the minimum 2,000 to 4,000 square feet only. So it's only 10% space only available for that much amount of trees. So this reason, for only this reason, we can adapt Miyawaki. But we have a larger space. We can try a lot of ancient methods and other type of methods we can plant. So
correct.
this
And
reason
like
only
you
we are
pointed
choosing
out,
Miyawaki.
Miyawaki himself, when he started repairing or sort of caring for sacred groves there in Japan. So like he did it, you've sort of replicated in your examples of caring for sacred groves on one side, the sacred groves in Tamil Nadu, that type of forest, while also replicating like these urban, smaller forests, dense forests that are human made, like made now. These immediate forests, in contrast to the learnings of ancient like forestry. So that was what I wanted to ask you, Ki, when you think of expanding your idea, do you think in terms of modules of Miyawaki forest, or is it like an amalgam? Is it like a blend of both old forests, like these sacred groves, like these INR groves, along with these Miyawaki forests? So, what is your idea of building a forest
Actually, it's
or
based on
expanding?
the
Sorry.
site condition. No. It's based on the site condition only. For example, industrial area, they have only 5,000 square feet, 2,000 square feet for the OSR land or something. We can plant. It's a barren land, a dumping yard. So it's a public land or a barren land. We can plant Miyawaki system. Otherwise, it's a school, residential area. The maximum we avoid Miyawaki forest because actually the ancient forests are our traditional forests having lot of space. It have a dense, okay, canopy size dense. Dense, they have bushes, they have shrub type also. So it have access. But Miyawaki forest, the 3 feet distance only. After that, so many years go, it will the trunk size is maybe 1 feet or 2 feet. There is no space for accessing. I already told there is no 30 years, 50 years. We have 100 years, 500 years old reserve forest. But in
Correct.
India, we don't till now we don't see any 100 years old, 50 years old Miyawaki forest system. So this is a
So
new
it's a
method.
work in progress,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. This is a new method. We are observing plus or minus what is because not the main problem. The main thing is we are observing accessibility in to the Miyawaki forest. Once we done a Miyawaki forest, after 5 to 10 years, we can't go inside that. We have a space or whatever, we have a pathway, whatever. But inside the forest, we can wait and see. But we suggest in schools or we can the temples because based on the audience taste. Yeah, in environmental sector also need some masalas. So in school children, we can plant rare trees for the subject oriented, especially mostly is the monopoly, the culture. Only they plant neem tree only, or they plant gulmugar only. So they are planted. So we need to avoid the monopoly. We, for example, they have so to the students. So in temple, like God bless, we have a lot of star trees. So we got, we create the interest to the people to develop the green cover. So as an environmental sector, we are working in an environmental sector. We need to know the pulse of the audience, and we gave a we create an interest to the people, especially because planting trees is not a matter; it's a one-time matter. But maintaining trees is the main matter. So already said, we need to create a community for that. Actually, I share my bitter experience. Actually, in Chennai, I do on Miyawaki forest, in forest in here, almost in Chennai. Um, the association treasurer, or I think secretary, bring us to that place. We plant lot of trees in Miyawaki method. After the 3 days, the apartment president pluck all trees and throw away because internal politics. Okay, because he wants to. It was done by us. So that kind of my mentality. So I went to because we almost last 10 years we crossed a lot of the A center audience, B center audience, C center audience. So a lot of kind of people we met in a very rural area, slum area, or village area. Okay, especially plantation is a single day matter, but maintenance is only in the people land. So before plantation, we need to concentrate to educate the people only. So after that, if you create a education, you don't we don't need to that area.
When I thought political problems, I thought there'll be conflict. I thought it will be conflict from some political.
Place,
I didn't expect two
every place,
stakeholders.
Same concept in various name. Every place, same concept in various name only. So level is maybe differ, but the same problem. So we need to educate the people is the main thing.
Correct. So going back to one slide back where I had mentioned these what are there around the settlements, all these institutions, what is the social context, the proximity, the closeness of this settlement and these groups of settlements to the dump, their history and their continuous expansion today, informally, formally, whatever, their expansion, as well as their location itself. It's created a huge gap in the social structure of the entire city. So in the same ward, you have one division where on one side you have all these large corporations and their housing colonies, their quarters, and on the other side you have this settlement that is receiving no help. In terms of environment, no help at all. And even as recent as 2019, when I was doing my thesis, many women my age whom I interviewed and spoke to and even befriended, they dropped out of high school. They dropped out of school in the 8th standard at the age of 13 due to social stigma, poverty, the general health condition, everything. So this settlement is actually filled with so many bright people who are full of immense potential and untapped talent and lots of hope. So our project, by tying up with the institutions that are there on like right next to our site, we can create this mild nudge towards the community, towards the social structure in place, to start seeing their women and their kids as the bringers of change, as potential breadwinners, and to create this environmental shield for them. So therefore, our collaboration will have to engage with and educate the local women, the local kids, and by roping them in, this pilot project could include many more women in Mumbai by replicating this little greening project on other parts of the city. we can help women, enter the workforce and create this community thing that you were talking about now, these smaller problems that happen. If we have a proper unit in place of people who will be willing to volunteer or get employed, and also this constant stream of young children who take this up as a subject. This is introduced in school, greening as a subject, which by the way in C we had multiple times. We had the gardening elective and the greening elective. We sort of multiplied that by across all schools. We have a constant supply of little kids who are interested to learn, and this is outdoors activity. No, nobody's going to get that bored. So this could be a sort of project where we tie up with everybody. So what makes your project unique in terms of context? Because Miyawaki means it should be native, and you helped us with a picture of these sacred groves. What is it that makes it unique, with the history and folk tales of your, like, Tamil Nadu and that particular region? And how does it change from state to state? Like, for example, in Maharashtra, like, what do you expect as the changes?
Actually, sacred groves are also in India, Nepal, and whatever. There are so many places where they have sacred groves. We are conservate the sacred groves is own concept, because nobody touched that area, because the reason is if a new development projects came, the sacred groves, the unnoticed sacred groves in the list of barren land only. They don't the Julifora tree, Karvelamaram, Sime Karvelam, Julifora trees. It occupied the overall water bodies. So people, the movement also created to the Julifora, Sime Karvelam, Karvelamaram சொல்லுவாங்க. So
இதுவா, is it the one?
Julifora.
Okay.
So it's not a native tree, but it people thought it absorb water, a lot of water. It's mostly you can see that in the barren land. முள்ளு இருக்கும், நிறைய முள்ளு இருக்கும்.
Okay, it has thorns. Okay.
So in government view, it's a Julifora tree or a neem tree or whatever tree. It's all about only thing is the barren land only. So if any development projects came, they give a land, it's maybe a sacred grove or whatever. So first of all, we need to identify and document the sacred groves. Okay, one thing. Another concept is social forest. It's not a unique project, but we can create a unique business model from this project. It's like a tree museum and herbal museum, whatever. It's a eco based on that local area. It's a cultural center also. So we create a social forest, and we can employ. It's like a botanical park. The simple aspect, simply say for to all common people, it's like a botanical garden. You can see more than lot of number of native species. It's because only the parks, they have only the crotons, Korean grass. Mostly a lot of ecological parks only Korean grass, this kind of crotons only. They have this traditional flowers. So it's for example, schools came to for the school trips, like a museum or whatever. So it will generate the revenue for the.
So you're saying a program for everything. So in some places it will be a temple with a forest attached. In some places it will be a museum with a forest. So giving a reason to conserve that
space availability.
Correct. So that program, that use of the place.
Yeah, we can implement, and it's maintained, and the entrance like a park. It's like a park. The people come for entry fees, 10 rupees or 20 rupees, whatever. For
it's a social space, basically.
Yeah, in a social space, they conducted by we can create a self-help group from that. You mentioned that kind of women's school dropouts. So we create a self-help group. They maintain that area, so they generate revenue from that area. They can maintain for minimum 30 cents 1 acre. It's like it's a common man thinking. It's like a park.
Correct.
they
And
can
depending
generate.
on where we find the land, no, where we identify the land. If it's
Yeah,
all existing park, now we can, cultivate it as an
yeah.
existing
Not
park attached
a
forest.
simple plantation. People also don't like. Yeah, one NGO came and they plant tree, so they can take care. But
And
in
also,
the
if the ground isn't exactly toxic, now we chose, like, we initially looked at a toxic site,
okay,
so we
okay.
should test and all that.
Initially
But
we
in a
given
regular
the
site,
dumping area. Yeah, dumping area we can do something based on the we need to
test it
measure
and all that.
testing the soil and
Yeah,
groundwater and humidity, air pollution. So after that, we can plant something. Maybe we filled up with red soil or whatever we
correct.
replacing the
Create a
soil. Whatever
trench and yeah,
we can do anyway. We can do anyway in dumping yard. But other places, and we need to create a employment through green cover.
correct.
So
Parallelly, one more
it
project or something.
yeah, yeah. Actually, I want to mention that thing in a social projects or public works. We do have a priority wise 2 3 choices because I shared my another experience. Actually, my wife have conceived my baby in 5 months. Okay, now he running only 1 year old. In fifth month, my fifth month, we started that project. Okay, it's a 1 month project. 10,000 saplings near our railway station. Okay, till now last week my son after my delivery almost 1.5 years gone. Till now that project is there. There is
It's
nothing what
not
will happen
moved ahead. Nothing has happened.
because already land filling is finishing. Just a motor work done by something on that officer getting some delay. So till now, actually they spent more than 4 lakhs. The other people, other parties, 2 3 people, rotary clubs, railways. So many stakeholders. One person do their work, another person holding that work. It will delay for 1.5 years. But anyway delayed. But
So
in my point of view, Miyawaki is you need long time to. For example, if we start a Miyawaki day one, we need to plant after the 30 to 45 days only, because after dumping that the heat will be generated. So now the land will be very fertile, but
okay.
due to lot of lagging, so we need to we in the public work we have priority wise that work will stuck. They can focus another. Otherwise, we will drain out
Correct.
by the system. By the system, we will drain out. So we need to 2 3 options parallelly, and also we get lot of motivation also. So one side work will happen is super. People coordination will be very wonderful. Other side is very easy. So this motivation gives to balancing that work.
No, sir, you don't know how much I had to edit in this PPT. Our government changed. So all the other logos had to fit. Oh, now there's a new logo. So, no, I agree with you. The kind of time that is said on paper, oh, this takes 2 years. But that is after planting the sapling. Before planting the sapling, the kind of paperwork that goes in, which so that the hassles of all that, because we are learning from your urban, like your study of ancient forests and your study of urban forests and these experiences that you're talking about, how much time it takes and how dense does it grow, but also all these
Actually,
tree plantation
one
drives
thing.
that you do.
Okay, this normal plantation, this Miyawaki's community. Okay, sacred growth is very controversial subject. Okay, you need to very carefully. Okay, because I am documenting small deities, and I am not focusing small deities, native deities. I am focusing how native deities uh, conserve
This
the
were here, correct? Okay,
native species. So
okay,
I am focusing sacred grow on that way. I am focusing on the indigenous plant, very ancient plant in that sacred grow. Okay, so I am aspecting that area only. So that it's very a controversial thing only. We are actually public work is a very controversial work, but otherwise we are focusing on environmental. A lot of people don't have interest in environmental sector because of their especially public. So they don't need to give attention to them. So we need more energy to drive that. So little careful in
So
any
you're saying
any.
the time till you plant, like the two examples that you gave of your experiences and the hurdles you face, the obstacles you face. In both examples, what I inferred is that even in the first case, the sibling rivalry, and in this second case where the treasurer or whoever comes and removes what the chairman has done, it's a case of getting all your like everything sorted before you take that first step of plant. Like of course the groundwork and everything needs to be done 6 layers, 7 layers, and then getting to the planting. That itself takes so long that the forestry part of it looks shorter compared to the paperwork that happens before. Is that what you're saying?
My belief is first 3 years. It's a, we need to regularly go. Otherwise, every person, every side we get. Actually, today I got a call from one side, sir, that association people do not pay the electricity bill. So last 10 days we don't watering the plants.
Correct. But what if
I
it
am
was
not
a
a owner.
public site? Because looking
Yeah,
at this, if even if it's a government-owned site that's marked on the DP as this is government-owned, it's a government body, will the hurdles be the same as someone comes and removes something, or what has your experience been so far?
first 2 years, we need to protect like a child.
Mm.
We don't. Actually, only 6 months they are going to maintain. Only other 6 months the rain will come.
Correct.
Because compared with other plantations, they can absorb a lot of water. It retaining water because we are dumping a lot of things inside the
Hmm.
underground. So compared with other, it will sustain by rain. But first 1 year, second 1 year, we need to maintain only 6 months only. Otherwise, they will grow up by rain. After the 2 years, they will. We will maintain all things. We need to retain the plants by so periodically
Pruning
maintenance.
also.
Yeah,
Hmm.
pruning. So after 2 years only, we can uh, literally hand over to them. Otherwise, we need to regularly check up because
Correct.
in our point of view, only it's a big thing. That point of view is not a bigger matter. So we need to follow minimum 2 years. For example, we have CSR. We already claimed 2 years AMC for that. It's a better option. In any budget we are including, first 2 years we can add a AMC for that. Otherwise, we
Okay.
are some of the project I failed or I uh, did mistake is only we are doing a quotation quote for only a plantation only. We
Okay.
don't need AMC. So
Okay.
uh, yeah, adding AMC is a better thing for plants.
Okay. So that's what learning from your thing going forward. Uh, when you actually conduct these drives and you get people together, as in Madurai or with whichever city in Tamil Nadu, when you get people together, how sustained is the effort? Or forget effort, how sustained is the interest of people to care for the well-being of these new forests that you plant? Like how often do you get volunteers and children wanting to
Yeah,
participate in this?
yeah. Especially I'm interested to interact with children only because they are only listening very very carefully to our message. For example, from 2012 to 16, in Tamil Nadu we have a biggest protest, Jallikattu protest happened. So till
Okay.
now we have a lot of volunteers came. For example, we have 7 a.m. plantation. Volunteer knock the door around 6:30. So now they have from social media. They wanted we have a separate NGOs. Today is the biggest issue of running a uh, community-based NGO. If you have a microfinance, if you have a self-help group, you need to put a microfinance scheme. Otherwise, they will leave the group. So engaging people in today, but we are fortunately we have a lot of good cards. If we today posting, hey, tomorrow we have plantation or whatever, lot of people came, so it's good.
But to have a sustained effort, you'll need to have a sustained effort. It's better to generate like a finance element.
Finance element is very biggest challenge. So it's very toughest. அப்படி எப்படி சொன்னா புலம்புற மாதிரி ஆயிடும். ஸோ அது வேணாம். பட் so interest level, maintaining interest level is the biggest challenge. So that's the major priority. If you have fund or whatever. So after 2 years, 3 years, it will very change for the volunteers. They have a fresher, so they came. After 2 years, the seniors for a college student, I told. So they have other kind of interest or other kind of works. So we need to take a fresher. We need it's a rotation based things. We create actually before COVID, we went to every colleges, every classroom. We are speaking about social responsibility of everyone. So volunteers came automatically upon social media. So a lot of things connect. But after COVID, they separate a lot of NGOs. Our team members, not only our team members, we have a consistent team, but mostly we saw people doing individually. It's a good thing, but cooperative model is very less here. So then interest level and the maintaining consisting in the interest level is not possible. Maybe they have a participant. If you have a bigger event, the old volunteer will come. Now if you are a student, you can participate. After you graduate, you have a lot of works, lot of commitments. So rotation basis.
So volunteers is volunteering works on a rotational basis or on a choice basis. Okay, this is a big event, I will come and volunteer. But it's beneficial if we have a group, a team on ground that are employees who will have the same sustained effort.
You need to convince them. Initially 2 or 3 of them will come. Okay, after 6 months we do something, but if we failed to prove them, they all people will leave.
Correct.
So we are not a microfinance agency. We are not a microfinance agency. We give it nowadays. Honestly, I can speak. I can openly speak to any places. Self-help group become a microfinance only. If I actually self-help group is to empower the women. They create become the women self-help entrepreneurs, self-employed. So this much of reason is there. So for personal reasons only, they collecting money. They only for the interest based money. It's a microfinance agencies group, self-help group nowadays in most of the cities. So we need to collect, join the people by values only. Otherwise, next after you're getting 50 members, some of the corrupted people gave some idea. Hey, we have 50 members. Maybe we can join something financially, something doing. So interest basis. So it's very crucial thing in
to keep your ethics in place.
We are not authority. We are not a government authority. So we are NGO. So maintaining people only by values, and we need to prove them immediately. So how long time you are going to take? Okay, this system will be benefit for us. We can prove very earlier because they have some expectation. Okay, next month. For example, I go to my dad. I said, Papa, I want to become an entrepreneur. They first 6 months they have some curiosity. Okay. The observation period. So next 6 months they ask questions. Then next few months they shouting.
So there are checks and balances in place. There's a sense of responsibility to it.
Yeah, because I'm doing same thing. I create a men's not a self-help group, men's group for environmental in my rural area. Not actually I'm not a Madurai person. I am from nearby district, rural area. So in my village, I start a group of people, but they divided by caste, area wise. So
So it's important to keep the core group together and
yeah,
sort of iron out differences in the
very,
beginning.
so actually, after the 1 month, they are doing what lot of plantation activity. We are cleaning on nearby pond. So after 1 or 2 months, a lot of people joining with interest. So financially, we can do anything. So some people came with issues with caste and other issues. So finally, the total team will leave that group.
We have a question here that says that is there a specific type of land required for Miyawaki forest, or like some land that has black cotton soil in Maharashtra, or some lands that have only Muram soil or exposed basalt. So depending on the person is asking if we can plant this type of forest in areas of different soil types, or is there any specific soil type?
I do
Yeah.
in very clay soil, ரொம்ப hard clay soil. It's a paddy field, like a paddy field. We plant Miyawaki forest. Red soil, okay. அப்புறம் black cotton soil. So 4 to 5 soils, rocky area. So um,
Basically, it has to be in the native forest in the native soil.
native forest, but the growth wise it will maybe slow.
It will be
Because,
different,
yeah,
no, depending on the season.
For clay soil, for example, a red soil, I plant a tree in 9 months, it will become 18 feet height. 2 feet,
Okay.
almost 2 feet height tree, half feet உள்ள போயிடுச்சு. So 1.5 feet height tree. So 9 months it will grow 18 feet. 2 years old Miyawaki in clay area. It's a unfertile land. Okay. Uh, 2 years after that, it will only 12 feet height. So
So it depends on the soil.
Growth ratio, difference will be based on the soil. Otherwise, we can plant whatever you can plant in a desert area also.
So actually, that's there. The diagram of a Miyawaki is there in one of the slides after this. But doing a quick recap of what our project is, that step one is just identifying the plot, whether it's a historical existing forest or ground, or whether it's a government regulated zone or one of these like edges of the city or an urban zone. Step two would be to, if it's an existing zone, to care or revive the existing forests or grove and to rejuvenate that biodiversity there. Or if it's a new zone, trying out the Miyawaki method of native and immediate forest. And the third step, the most important and long step, would be to maintain this. So if it's an existing thing, maintaining using local knowledge and local systems, or through the new methods, creating these self-help groups, these cooperative movements and these methods, and also involving like this constant circulation of volunteers through students, things like that. So these are the 3 steps to create a forest. And in our question of why here and what can it be here, these green nodes along the dump yard. So on the left, we can introduce groves in the image, as you can see inside a settlement. While on the right, you can have a different type of forest, which is a tree-lined, a colonnade of just trees over here on the right. So this will help create public spaces. It will help the social conditions on site, the health on site. It can help create jobs the way we create the cooperative module, the way we interact with the community. We can create jobs and improve the life over there. But most importantly, it can be a pilot model that creates these new common spaces for people that can be replicated. But to do this, how do we do this? We need the technology, the time, the money, the approvals that you spoke of, the various government bodies, the human labor, the effort needed to maintain and replicate. This was actually what the question asked. Now, where can we grow these Miyawaki forests? A Miyawaki forest is this dense, indigenous forest, like native forest. So native, it could be on any sort of soil, but it needs to have this layering of trees. Like sectionally, it has to have these layers of a shrub layer, then a shorter tree layer, then the canopy, the topmost layer. And from Sakthivel, this is the information I got, that the number of saplings determine the size of the forest. So if each sapling requires 3 to 3 feet, 3 square feet minimum, that way you have to decide what size of plot, what size is the plot, and how many trees can you fit in based on that well-being of that one tree, and also the type of plant determines the space. So suppose it's a particular type of soil and only that particular type of plant grows there, then you can't really crowd it based on that plant. So it depends on the type of plant and the type of forest. But in a case like here in Mumbai, where it's a toxic land, a lot of effort will go into the testing of the soil and the additional processes and techniques for this landfill site. So research is required in this particular case because it's not a regular a regular soil. So that's what an ideal Miyawaki forest comprises of all these, correct mix of plants and the right kind of testing, the correct time to plant, like any other forest, like the time to plant, and how we maintain it. So this is the timeline for an ideal forest. Like some of the forests in Tamil Nadu that Shaktivel has worked on, this is the timeline that he's seen. So the first time goes to train the labor, train the people with respect to how to treat the soil, how to get the soil. After that, 2 years after planting, 2 years of minimum requirement, like minimum maintenance. 2 to 4 years, you have this basic maintenance. And 4+ years, you just have to have a caretaker or a security guard. The funding. So the funding in East Ward, we are looking at all the corporations that function right out of the same ward, the M ward, East and West both combined. Who are the people who function out of this ward, and how can they help us? So this in the earlier government had this climate action plan, Mumbai climate action plan, which was recently released, and how to tackle climate change. So through the Maji Vasundhara scheme, or through the climate action plan, but also through older environmental bodies like MMREIS and also UN Habitat and United Nations. So all of these bigger bodies, and also the local immediate large bodies, institutions that we have, we can tap into their environmental social responsibility funds like CSR. But our core budget depends on the following: the kind of materials we need, like to excavate the ground. How much of ground can be excavated in a landfill site? How do we test this soil? And the additional materials required once you test the soil and figure out key it's this percent toxic. How do you counter that? What is the accessibility to site? So right now there's only one road that goes to site. How do you access site? How do you get all the composite 6 layers of soil or whatever is required for Miyawaki, depending on the ground? How do you get all the material for that? And then logistics like pipeline laying. So if it's that straight strip of Miyawaki, what is the kind of watering that it needs versus these smaller groves? How do already people are fighting for water over there? Now, how do you propose a grove and say, oh, this is going to be watered and maintained? So that is one thing that we'll have to get together as a community and decide. And then ease in getting approvals under the guidance of an organization like this that functions right here. We can take their help and their existing community networks to go collectively and ask for approvals and write to the municipal corporation about the lands that are there, that are already there in the DP. All of these lands, whether it's an RG, a school land, an environmentally protected land, or even a hospital property, or one of these colonies. So this is how you identify the lands and ask for permission. What are the efforts? So these are pictures that were clicked on site. This was during my thesis when I saw kids on a busy school day. You have kids playing all over site. It's like a festive environment. So it looked like a summer holiday. So you have children playing. There's a lot of participation. Any new person goes to site, there are a number of people who come and talk to you, interact with you, who help you, who take you around site. So the participation and the talent aspect of it is right there. So how do you harness that and join them in creating this sort of an environmental shield? And this is a study, this is an article about how music was used in Sweden as a subject, and that sort of calmed the children down. That sort of improved the social structure in schools. So similarly, if we introduce gardening as a subject or forestry as a subject, what kind of changes can we see? And the replication, the maintenance, and like Shakti rightly pointed out, we don't know a very old Miyawaki forest in India. We don't have any example. But looking at our first 4 years, how do we see our project by interacting with the different departments that are already functioning on site? Can we take their help in the maintenance and also have our own group of employees or volunteers who come in, our cooperative movement that sort of both merge and keep these forests functioning as forests for the society? So that in this manner, we choose to convert certain pockets of this informal settlement into these green nodes that can be activated later. So thank you. There's another question. I think you will have to answer.
Thanks. I'll take up those questions.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks for setting up this lovely conversation between both of you, Sakthi and Vibhavari. There are several important, there's several important things that your presentation flagged off. I'll kind of put forth 5 points that struck out for me, and in the process of opening out those 5 points, I'll try to kind of take this conversation a little forward by asking both of you all questions separately, which you all can respond to, and then we'll open this up for comments, questions, and discussion with the audience, and we'll take the question and answers that have been put forth in the comments box. Okay. So one of the things, and one of the most important points I think that your presentation brings about, firstly, is that it interrogates in the first set of drawings that Vibhavari and Sakthi presented. It interrogates the whole aspect of the contemporary moment read through the trope of climate emergency. It is not as if emergency is something new. It has always existed. In the case of the particular case that Vibhavari presented from Mumbai, emergency has been present in the form of a toxic condition, which becomes the context for everyday life. But in the present, the way in which emergency gets framed and responses generated to it essentially end up displacing people from the habitats in which they live in. So the whole experiment that Vibhavari starts off discussing, which is about how does one think about improving the habitats of such vulnerable conditions, because there exists a particular condition which is fraught with several health problems and other kinds of things. How does one start engaging with such conditions rather than kind of see them as landscapes that need to be cleared out? So that's one of the very important points that you foregrounded, Vibhavari. Going to the context of Tamil Nadu, like moving from Bombay, which is an estuarine condition, to the context of Tamil Nadu, whose whole this landscape of the entire state, which has been generated, or rather cultivated over centuries through a series of water tanks that connect water systems across the state. And given the fact that Tamil Nadu is a place where which relies heavily on water through its water systems, which have been cultivated over centuries. Okay, so both of them are two different set of landscapes. And in Tamil Nadu, Sakthivel, along with the process of urban forestation that one talks about, it intersects. I mean, I know several cases to name a few of them, in Coimbatore as well as in Salem, urban forestation has intersected with the rejuvenation of lake systems, integrating flora and fauna together with very old lake systems that exist along water bodies that flow from the west towards the east. So these are two different landscapes. What seems to be common, and from my knowledge of some of the places in Salem and in Coimbatore, what seems to be common across both the contexts is that in the dense urban conditions across the water bodies in Tamil Nadu and across these estuarine landscape, in this case, which has become a garbage dump, the edges are made up by dense settlements or dense bastis or informal settlements, which it seems to be kind of common. Okay? In many of the cases in Tamil Nadu, one sees that, as a part of the afforestation drives or the lake rejuvenation drives, many of these settlements are cleared off. Many of the settlements are cleared off. What I wanted to kind of get at is one of the two important things that your presentation brought out, the idea of imagining a community, and that's my second point that I will reach out to, where you opened out two things. One is the idea of the sacred, and the idea of the sacred, Sakthivel, I mean, I'd like you to discuss a little more about the idea of the sacred and the community that it gets connected to. Is there a particular class-based community that emerges out of it? Does caste, in some of these experiments that you've been doing, does the mobilization of the community through the idea of the sacred mobilize a particular kind of caste group, or do different kinds of caste groups intersect in this mobilization? If you could talk a little bit about that, that'll be very interesting. Let me kind of go ahead. I'm just kind of posing these questions, but I'll go ahead. I'll finish off, and then you all can take over. My third point was regarding the process which your entire presentation spoke about. On the one hand, you have in Vibhavari's Padmanagar experiment along a garbage dump, a Padmanagar settlement along a garbage dump, a settlement that has emerged along through a process of land development or built form development that is not linear in nature. One does not, in auto construction, what comes first, what comes next is a process that gets generated out of very contextual factors, and it shapes several kinds of interesting forces. Okay. In Sakthivel's experiments also, he talks very importantly about that there's a process central to the whole thing. And while you all were discussing the whole process, that there is a process before the plantation starts to get approvals from things. So on the one hand, there is an effort towards demonstrating the importance of afforestation in the city, and the most easiest places to start from seem to be public lands that would be available. Okay, which is a very important thing, and that for cities, this may be at this moment, this may be a very, very important thing to do. I want both. I mean, if both of you all, or either one of you could, respond to or talk a little bit about, for instance, when Sakthivel talks about the Miyawaki forest emerging from a context of Japan where there is little space, okay, and then moves on into experiments which are about a few acres of land being put together as a forest. So when there is a scarcity of space, what could be the imagination of the forest, particularly in settlements like Padmanagar, which seem to be vulnerable? And then what might be the processes that could be set up there beyond the processes of getting permission for approvals on public lands? And is there, I mean, how could the imagination of community get mobilized in such a case? If there is a little bit that you all can talk about, or the other way then maybe to think about this question is, what are the hurdles that one has faced in the whole process of getting permissions on in such complex conditions? My fourth point is specifically for Vibhavari to kind of think about. And if Sakthivel could join into this, it'll be great. Architects have been involved in the design in landscape design centrally, in the design of parks and gardens. In this case, urban afforestation seems to be taking on a particularly decisive turn at this moment in time. What was very interesting in your presentation was that it did not focus on the design per se of the forest, but it focused on the entire process of engaging with the contemporary landscape to initiate a process of making forests. It's not as if cities do not have social movements to kind of, towards public, which are interested in public spaces and parks. For instance, in Mumbai, there have been communities which have been engaged or which have mobilized the municipal corporation, the local state, to improve conditions of parks, to design parks, so on and so forth. But this seems to be taking a turn which is different than that. And Vibhavari, my question there is, I mean, what was interesting is that it didn't rely so much on the design of the park, that the role of the architect over here was not to show an imagination through the drawing of the forest, but to talk more about the process. So what is the idea of drawing out over here? And if you could articulate your thoughts a little bit around that, that would be very interesting. Yeah, these are my 4 points for this conversation. So y'all could respond to them, and then we'll open it up for a conversation with the audience. So my first point, I'm to reiterate again, Sakthivel, is when you mobilize the idea of the community in Tamil Nadu for afforestation, when you mobilize the sacred, do particular castes get linked to it? Do particular caste groups engage with this whole process of mobilization, or do you find people from across castes that are emerging? Because what one sees in Salem particularly is a whole middle class movements made of particular castes in afforestation or lake rejuvenation through afforestation.
Can we discuss about sacred?
Your voice is breaking, Sakti. Can you speak? Can you speak?
Yeah, can we discuss about sacred
Yes.
group? Okay, actually, in our literature, we are dividing in the landscape 5 types. Okay, mountain based, desert, dry, forest area, cropland, seashore, and whether the cropland and seashore, whenever they getting very dry, they have 5th type. So we have various type of landscape in literature, and we are also traditionally followed. For example, paddy area, so rain-fed area, so like that. So based on that landscape, they have sacred groves. Okay, here. Not only here, most of the places, maybe they don't know the difference of 5 types, but actually every places they have 5 types: mountain based, seashore based, cropland, uh, desert based. Okay, so based on that landscape, the caste system also differ. Okay, I understand, sir. Based on the landscape, they separated the caste system. For example, for forest area, the livestock cattle growing community will live. So that's that kind of sacred group maintained by that kind of people. For livestock fodder, they can use the land for fodder, livestock fodder. So when I went to lot of sacred groups, every area have different type of beliefs. Some areas they have a lot of stories. Maybe we are laughing also, but they have belief that belief give a life to that area trees. For example, uh, one politician giving a electricity line to his farm through this sacred grove. He cutting 2-3 trees. The next election, he failed. He lost. So people believe if you cut any branches or cutting the trees, so the mother nature will be they have a native deity. So it will punish them. So another one story: the one drunken person came and he shouted and he plucked the branch. So they said his eyes fell down into the ground. So this kind of belief and scared. So sacred groves maintained by scared only. Most of the side, most of the villages. When the scared, when the fear went out, they will encroach the sacred grove. So the fear, the native deity and the mother nature will punish you. That belief only give a life to the sacred groves. For example, Vibha, can you share one tree? Thetangotain photo or photo.
Which one?
And our photo.
I'll just share my screen 1 second.
Actually, I am also very scared. But after
Ida?
இல்ல அந்த ஒரு மரத்துக்கிட்ட இதுதான் இது முன்னாடி ரெண்டு போட்டோ வச்சிருந்தீங்களா முன்னாடி போட்டோ ரெண்டுமே நான் இருப்பேன்ல ஒரு இதுகிட்ட உட்கார்ந்து ஓகே இதா ஓகே actually you can see this is the in Hindi name Nirmali Barmisi, I think so. The seed is using for filtering the water. So this is more than 100 years old tree. Where I am stand, the local people is scared to stand like this. We are strangers, so we have some brave. So we stand near the tree. So near this tree, this is a sacred tree in that area. Actually, it's a sacred grove, but in that area, in Tamil name Tetan Kotai, botanical name Steichnos potatorum. So Nirmali Barmis is the Hindi name. So the people worship the tree. they don't cut a single branch in a tree. If any branch fall into the ground, they don't take to further purpose. So because some kind of deity inside the tree, so there is no physical statue or any other anything. The tree is only the temple. So I think it's more than 100-year-old tree. So another tree is actually there is no deity statue in the second place, green t-shirt place. There is no deity, just it's a weapon for that god. So this tree also a very ancient tree. The nearby other places are very empty only. People never cut the tree because of they believe some deity in that some god in that tree. So the both picture is in the various kind of sacral groves. So people have various kind of but it does not maintain. Actually sacral groves mostly does not maintain, maybe worship by some particular community caste also, but otherwise mostly unfortunately or fortunately some of the most of the sacred groves in the reserve forest area, so it's under the forest department control. Otherwise inside the cities in the government document they have a that's a barren land only. I already told you that's a barren land. But when physically we saw, it's a lot of trees occupied. The people worship that god. So if any development projects came, government give the 100 acres, 3 acres land. Yeah, because it's mostly outer available in the outer area of the city. So if any development projects, for example, any godown or camp or any school project, whatever government project, central government or state government project, they will give a land to the particular project. So first of all, we need to identify the sacred grove, and we are mentioning the hot spot of the actually hot spot. We need to announce the places as a hot spot. You know the biodiversity hotspot. You can't touch any if any government projects came our way, whatever it's like a reserved forest. No one can do anything, even a government. So the major in my field experience, where I came to a lot of places, we need to project the and certify the places as a biodiversity hotspot. So it's a need. It's only need to protect the sacred groves. Otherwise, you can go plantation. You document anything. If because that is the rule. This is a barren land. If any projects came, need to give to the particular department. So we for sacred groves, if you do anything for sacred groves impactfully, you need to identify and announce that place by government as a biodiversity hotspot. So for that thing, we need to document that area. We need to document all kind of species and explain them to how they create impact, how we create biodiversity, ecological conservation. Then only we can save the sacred groves. Otherwise, we can speak about anything because in the current situation, government or anything, they need a space. So these sacred groves nearby urban area, we need to announce as a hotspot. Otherwise, it will encroach or whatever. It will collapse. Because I have a document for Tamil Nadu sacred groves. It's more than 600 sacred groves. Nearly in Madurai surrounding, we have 30 to 40 sacred groves. Only 2 to 3 have a forest now. Otherwise, now become a marriage hall, tourism hall. So otherwise, because it's outer area, so they do except the hill station, except the hills. Actually, because I have entire data of in 1992 to till now, sacred grove list in Tamil Nadu. Only 2 to 3 per district forest only available in sacred groves due to the deities only. So we need to identify first, then documentation, then submit to the government forestry department. Please announce it's a hotspot, biodiversity hotspot. Otherwise, it's very hard to conserve the sacred groves. Okay, sacred groves actually sacred groves benefit. Most of them don't know about the benefits. Um, it sustains the total ecology of that area, and also they only have the very rare and indigenous plant. I told a simple story. In ancient time or ancient time, if anyone have a snake bite, if snake bite, the doctor of that area, doctor of that period person came into the forest and they bring herbal to that snake bite. So that is a sacred grove actually. So due to globalization, urbanization, we forget about that herbals and rare species, native species. So in that ancient time, that the particular medicine person only can allow in Tamil Nadu the சொல்லுவாங்களா வைத்தியன்னு சொல்லுவாங்களா so on the ancient doctors only came to that area. That's a particular community, that's a particular caste, so they only go to the herbal area, but other caste people going to the branches woods. So they gave us a native deity, the for outer area, but the god with very large weapon. So they have fear about that god. So they don't do any illegal activities into the forest. That is the sacred groves. Due to urbanization, globalization, we are encroached. So we are doing whatever malpractices. So we are destroyed the sacred groves. But they have a deity and other things. Some exceptional trees or one or two trees are available in nowadays. Otherwise, most of the sacred groves destroyed by us.
Thanks.
So we need to okay.
Thanks. That's a very interesting understanding that you proposed. And these 30 to 40 sacred groves in Madurai, you're speaking about them in the entire district or in the city? In the city of Madurai, around 30 to 40.
Yeah. Actually, Madurai district is separated by 5 districts. So almost 100 numbers of sacred groves available in the list, but otherwise forest wise only 20 to 30 only available. Okay. Most of them in the hill station.
Okay. Thanks, Sakthivel. Vibhavari, do you want to come in and respond to any of the questions?
No, I just remembered that in the third year in C, when we were doing the river study of Poisar, some of us studied the source of the river. Poisar is one of the 4 rivers of Bombay. And while studying the source, we, as part of our zone, we had a masjid, a kabristan, and a crematorium. And one of the ways that we realized that to protect the riparian edge, the edge of the river, was to make use of these sacred groves. So that was the thought that came into my head, that in Bombay, whether it's the banyan tree that is never cut, or the peepal tree that's never cut, or the trees inside a crematorium or a cemetery or a kabristan that's never cut, because of because of the spiritual value attached to it. We harness on that, and if we create groves even in these, like this site has 2 masjids, we can take that as a possibility and clean it up. That's all.
So the kind of the community spaces you're saying are the possibilities to think about initiating.
Yeah, like Shakti said, fear. It's not fear. It's more of the idea of the unknown. Like the God-fearing nature of people makes them not touch these particular trees. So even during the Poisar design, I remembered the person in charge of the mosque, the mosque in Kabristan there, said that as a design suggestion, He said that this way it'll get protected. The edge will get protected. If you start planting these particular trees, nobody will touch it. So that was one thing that I got from site itself back then.
And so after that, I mean, like after finishing of this, the whole process has been towards mobilizing the local state, the municipal corporation to initiate such a project in this ward. And what you've kind of shown through the whole process is that you've been mobilizing places which are either owned by this or owned by the state or by the municipal corporation or by some large organization which would kind of give up such a space for this afforestation. So what has this process entailed for you? I mean, how have you kind of gone about? How have you gone about engaging with these organizations to kind of start initiating this project?
Asking
What
me?
kinds of and what kind of hurdles have you faced in this whole process?
This would be a direct answer to your the first question where you said that usually settlements are cleared in order to create these green lungs or whatever. But on a personal capacity, I remember I approached TISS because I live right here in Devna. And through TISS, the two officials in TISS, we went to the gardens department of the M East Ward, which is very close to the dump yard itself. And when we went there, at least I expected them to not listen because you have this idea. That was my first time at a government office, like a proper ward office. So I expected them to not listen to us. But in fact, quite the opposite. They were very, very hopeful of our project. And they said that, hey, why don't you help us? Because we have also planted saplings and the roads department comes and removes it. So we plant one evening, next morning, these guys come and take it. So if you guys are doing it, please do it for us also. So there is a lot of hope. And especially in Miyawaki. So the general idea is that, oh, Miyawaki forests are these quick, fast-growing forests that are bad. But actually, the gardens department people told us, ki, please don't think Miyawaki forests are like this. They're actually native trees, and you need to take. So they were actually very helpful. So I didn't face any hurdles so far. I'll be taking the proposal to them from school, like now next week. We'll be taking it to them and then we'll see. But now the biggest hurdle is whatever happened last week, like we'll see. But otherwise they were but they were very helpful and they were very hopeful also. They gave us ideas. They have planted trees and they've geotagged the trees. So they gave that as an idea, okay, surveillance, how to take care of trees. You can do it by geotagging. But they didn't think of this. They told us that land is toxic. What are you going to do about it? So one of the biggest hurdles I feel we're going to face is the land itself, the ground. It's very toxic. It's very different. It used to be marshy, and now layers and layers of settlements and all of that. That's probably the first hurdle we face.
Thanks. I'll take one of the questions that has been posted in the question and answers box. So which connects to what Vibhavari said. And Shakti, if you could respond to this question, it would be nice. Is there a specific type of land which is required by a Miyawaki forest? Like some land is having black cotton soil, which is in Maharashtra. Some lands are having only murum, and some lands have exposed basalt rock surface due to sheet flow. So can we plant trees in these areas too? Or is there any specific type of land which is required? This question is asked by OnePlus Nord 25G.
Okay, I already told our motto is creating green cover only. We don't develop any type of landscape, but if our problematic area is black cotton or a rocky area or a clay soil, we need to plant. So choosing the plants types. Okay. Another one is we can fill the filling material may be differ from the site based on the site condition. For example, in a dumping yard, we can filling the topsoil with topsoil, replacing the topsoil or whatever. Because after actually you know in the rock inside the rock the tree also growing in the hills area inside the rock. So for plantation we don't do any agriculture. Okay, so clay soil, red soil, we don't bother about it. But we can notice about it and we can work based on that site condition. But our motto is creating green cover. So we need to do whatever the lands, which is the landscape. We don't bother about it, but we bother when we are going to implement. We need to choose plant. We need to land filling method will be different from the site condition. So a little bit cost will be increased by maybe a red soil or maybe black cotton soil. It's very easy. But the rocky area, clay, vast area. So clay area cost will be some increased. Growth difference will be vary to, because I already told you, in red soil 9 months 18 feet it will go. For a very caustic clay soil, unfertile soil, 2 years only 12 to 13 feet only. But the plant will survive. The growth ratio will be different, and cost will be maybe increased. That is the answer. And for Vibha, if we can't accept Miyawaki in the dumping yard, we can dig a 3 feet depth pit. We will fill the replacing the soil. Once it's, you imagine like a nursery, they grow like a tree. In a day, you can buy a tree also. 10 feet saplings, 12 feet saplings you can buy. So dig a 3 feet minimum. I told minimum approximately 3 feet dig replacing soil, put with manure. Early stage you can the tree like a plastic cover soil, so it will grow like that. We can try that. Solutions is available based on the problem. So that's not a hurdle. Maybe solution may be different. Okay, for the dumping yard.
Okay. Thanks. So basically, you're saying that it can be done anywhere. It's just the type of trees that change.
Yes, sir.
There's another question. I mean, an anonymous attendee asks, can you suggest some tree names for canopy and for lower canopy trees?
Lower canopy mostly Goa. Fruit trees mostly like jamun and fig. It's a very canopy size, because canopy size like a Goa tree. Sitapalam, Sitapalam, custard apple, custard apple, custard. Sitapalam. Okay, custard apple. So mostly the papaya. So this kind of tree, bigger canopy, neem tree, banyan tree, whatever you know. Timber size canopy size தான். But fig, jamun இதெல்லாம் வந்து fruit types la canopy size bigger. Guava, custard apple. So canopy size very less. Fruit trees for individual purpose.
Thanks. I hope that answers the anonymous attendee's question. I'll open this up to any other comments, questions that anyone from the audience might have. You all can type in your questions or come into the conversation by just raising your hand, and we will get you into the discussion. So I don't think there are any other questions and comments, but the presentation has kind of left a lot of important points to take home. And for me, these were the 5 points that struck. But what you mentioned, Vibhavari, towards the end, that there is hope and there is a process of engagement with government departments, but also in kind of Sakti's words, there is a whole process of engagement. Sorry, Sakti, are you saying something and am I interrupting you?
Yeah. You can speak, sir, after that I will tell you.
No, please do, because I was getting this to a close. So please go ahead and then I'll kind of.
Okay.
The voice is breaking up.
You already mentioned.
Sakti,
sir, already you mentioned about. Okay, wait. 1 minute. Sorry, wait. Will come.
Even your video is frozen. I think he's rejoining.
Now okay?
Yeah.
Now okay?
Yes.
Okay, sorry for that. Okay, actually for design purpose, not for Miyawaki, layer wise, short type of flowers, bushes, shrub, short type of trees like a Miyawaki. We can add a bush, shrub, flower trees, slow by growth, like Vibhana Tamil சொல்லிருக்கேன். Okay. So படிக்கட்டு மாதிரி போகும் பாத்தீங்களா? So படிக்கட்டு மாதிரி அப்படியே
like a step gradation in the height.
Like gradation. So entrance-ல இது பண்றனால so ரொம்ப டென்ஸ்டா இருக்காது, ரொம்ப டென்ஸ்டா இருக்காது. அதே டைம் வந்துட்டு உங்களுக்கு ரொம்ப டென்ஸ்டா போறப்பதான் வந்துட்டு இந்த ஸ்னேக்ஸ் அதர் ஸ்பீசிஸோட டிஸ்டர்பன்ஸ் இருக்கும். இப்படி ஒரு ஸ்லோப்பா இப்படி போயிட்டீங்கன்னா விசிபிளாவும் ஈஸியா இருக்கும். People safety is very important other than environment. So
what he's saying is it needs to be stepped, like if we start off with by layer, like height wise, by arranging the plants, by growing plants height wise, you reach the tallest tree at a certain distance that's inside the grove. So even insects and snakes and other things will be restricted to that really dense portion, and there's a gradation in, you know, when you walk into a grove. So even visually, you were saying that you see the tree at a distance. It won't be like on your face, this, you know, mass of tall trees. So it was talking about gradation, stepped set of trees.
So in school projects and residential projects, we need to be carefully because already in the insects problem, snakes. So a lot of problems because Miyawaki is a very dense area. So for schools and residential area, maybe we need to avoid or based on the spacious area. So we need to avoid, maybe sometime we need to avoid Miyawaki for the school areas or residential area. Yes, it's a very dense area. So we need people's safety also.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Thanks a lot to Sakti and Vibhavari. Your presentation really brought forth many important points to take home. But this whole hope, which is very important and worthwhile to carry with us, that the whole process of engaging with the local state is a process that is filled with hope, as well as kind of framing imaginations of communities through different kinds of ideas, whether it is of the sacred or of any other idea that can get mobilized to afforest small landscapes.
I just like to intervene here. Sorry, there was that one last question that you asked about how this is not exactly architectural. You spoke about drawing this out as a process, but what I realized while studying, from 2019 during my thesis itself, is that this is a more palatable idea to everybody at large. Saying that it's because it's designed less, right? It's an experience. It's like the beach or it's like the mountains. It's a forest. So there's no set, like people are ready to think in that way because everybody knows what a forest is, and you're not removing anybody's house, or you're not doing anything. It's just carving out existing spaces. And of course, initially during thesis there were options where you remove one house, place it here, place it there, but now it's just along the edge and certain interior pockets. So because it's an experience, it's the lowest hanging fruit. It's easy to tell people about it, explain it to them, and they'll explain what they want rather than a built form and an architectural, I mean, in the real sense. It's like an experience. Even if it's architecture, whatever, it's like an experience. That's why I think it's easier to talk to people about it.
Thanks. No, I didn't mean that this was not architecture. I meant to kind of point out that the idea of drawing has changed. What one does draw and how one does think of drawing out possibly changes. It's not the physical plan that becomes important in this whole process, but the whole process of engagement with different kinds of actors. And possibly, I mean, the point that I was trying to get at was that what is the learning from all of this is one learns through a process of engagement with different kinds of actors, and it generates thick notes that become points of reflection. I think that becomes very important as to think about as drawing out of certain kinds of natures of engagement. And that's where I was kind of trying to get at, that it's not the drawing itself, the design itself, but the design of the conversation, which in some ways it is kind of nudged through step by step, but you go meet somebody first, that will generate a set of other conversations, so on and so forth. It is to that drawing out of conversations and the thickness that emerges from those conversations.
The process, okay.
The process that I was kind of trying to draw attention to. And for architects, I think this is something that could become very useful as a way of thinking through drawing and learning from it, rather than having an end in terms of the design right at the outset itself. So that's what I was trying to go at. So what's very interesting, and I didn't kind of point out to the fact that there is no architecture in this.
Oh, I thought that drawing.
Okay.
Sorry.
So thanks Vibha, thanks Sakti. There was a really interesting presentation and a lovely conversation between the both of you, and several important points to kind of take home. We look forward towards your development of this collaboration in the near future, in partnership with the School of Environment and Architecture, and we hope to take this partnership and collaboration forward. With that, I'll draw the Sea Conversations to a close. Our next Sea Conversations presentation and lecture is on 29th July by Hemang Mistry. We'll keep you updated through our posters and social media posts about the next lecture. Thank you once again. And I'd like to
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to thank once again Shared Ecologies program of the Shama Foundation and the Urban Center, Mumbai, for their support towards this Sea Conversation series, drawing out natures. Thank you very much. And we'll close with that over here.